More than an hour had passed, and still Luke Lane had not given up the armor. General Malevolent barely contained his righteous anger, wondering if they had already found it and thought that somehow they could use this magic against him. If so, they would be sorely mistaken. The armor would never work for their cause, and, if tampered with, would likely strike out at those investigating it. No, Bartok's legacy belonged to him, and him alone. In keeping with his threat, his demonic horde continued to assault the walls. The grounds near Luca Lane had been littered with the mangled remains of not only those who had earlier failed to reach the gates, but also several who had fallen from above. The demon archers had proven in many ways superior shots to even the men whose bodies they now inhabited. In addition, the 6 catapults that he had brought along now wreaked more havoc in the city itself. Protected by demonic sorceries, the siege machines in turn suffered no damage from Duke Elaine's return fire. He watched as those at the nearest catapult prepared yet another fiery gift for the inhabitants. General Malevolent had saved the weapons for just this, showing his adversaries that he would permit them no respite. Either they gave him what he desired, or even their high walls would not save them. Not that that would let such limited barriers save them in the end anyways. And the end was very near. Luca Lane, the general decided, had just run out of time. He would let the catapults fire their present volley, then give the command for his full strikes. The people within thought that their gates would hold against the invaders, but even now they underestimated the might of the demons. It would be a simple matter to remove the one obstacle to the horde's entrance into the city, and from there would begin a day of death so bloody that Luke Lane's fall would be spoken of in terrified whispers by all other men for years to come. Once more, the crimson armor of the warlord of blood would cast the shadow of fear across the entire world. Augustus' malevolence suddenly stiffened as an unsettling sensation filled him. He quickly turned to look behind him, certain that he had to see who or what approached from the rear. And over a dune came a familiar sight. Zazax, moving along the sand. That the demon had dared come so near to Luke Lane during the day puzzled the general, until he saw who walked beside the monstrous insect. The armor, he whispered almost reverently. Forgetting his demon soldiers, forgetting Luke Lane, Malevolent charged toward the oncoming pair. In all his life, he had never experienced so glorious a moment. Bartok's armor came toward him, his greatest desire at last come to fruition. Why the simpleton who had stolen it from the tomb still lived to wear it, only Zazax could say. It amazed Malevolent that the mantis had let the man live this long. Perhaps Zazax simply had not wanted to bother with carrying the suit back himself, and had forced the fool to bring it along. Well, for that deed, the least the general could do would be to grant the armor's present wearer a relatively quick and painless death. And what prize is this you bring me, my friend? The mantis sounded quite pleased with himself. A gift, surely proving this one's intentions match those of the warlord. This one gives you one Noric Vizaran, mercenary, tomb robber, and host for the glorious armor of Bartok. Mercenary and tomb robber? General Malevolent chuckled. Perhaps I should hire you on for your expertise. Certainly I should congratulate you for bringing me to this last final step in my ascension to glory. You want this suit? The fool sounded incredulous, as if he who had worn it so long could not comprehend its majesty, appreciate its power. Of course, I want nothing more. The general tapped his helmet. He saw that Norg Vizer and instantly recognized the link between them. I am General Augustus Malevolent, light of weight smarch. A land from your looks I think you know. As you see, I wear the helmet, lost when Bartek's head and body was separated by the fools. By fluke we managed to slay him. So fearful, and rightfully so, of his tremendous power, they placed body and head on opposite sides of the world, then secreted both in places from which they thought no one would be able to take them. They were wrong, muttered the mercenary. Of course, the spirit of the warlord of Bloodlet would never be denied. He called to his own, waited those whose links to him would stir the powers to life, to new horizons. What do you mean? Malevolent sighed. He supposed he should have slain the fool out of hand, but the commander's mood had grown so light that he had decided to at least explain what Nork had obviously never understood. Reaching up, General Malevolent gently removed the helmet. He felt a slight loss, as if left behind his head, but assured himself that soon it would be back in place. I did not know its secret then, but I know now, for the artifact itself revealed to me. Even you, I dare say, do not know the full truth, friend Zazax. The mantis performed a mock bow. This one would be delighted to be enlightened, warlord. And you shall. He grinned at Nork. I would wager to say that many died in the tomb before you came along, eh? Vizeran's expression darkened. Too many. Some of them were friends. You'll be joining them soon, have no fear. The ebony-clad officer let Nora get a better view of the helmet. I dare say it was the same with this. The same fate for every modern tomb robber, until one with a very special inherent trait that gave him just enough of an advantage. Malevolent's hand suddenly began to shake slightly. Quickly, but still with an air of casualness, he replaced the helmet. An instant feeling of relief washed over him, although he made certain not to let either the man or the demon know. Can you guess what you and he had in common? A cursed life? More a magnificent heritage. In both of you, the blood of greatness flowed, albeit in quite a watered state. This explanation only made Nork frown. He and I were related? Yes! Although in this case that bloodline had become even more diluted. It gave him the right to take the helmet, but he proved too weak to be of use, and so it let him be slain. With his death it grew dormant again, waiting for one more worthy. The general proudly indicated himself. And it finally found me, as you see. You share the same blood too? Very good! Yes, I do. Far less tainted than the witch that flowed through that fool, and I have no doubt far less tainted than you. Yes, Nork Verzeran, you might say that you and I, and he who discovered the helm and the helm, are all cousins. Several times removed, of course. But who? The soldier's eyes widened, truth Alice dawning on him. That's not possible! Zazak said nothing, but clearly he still did not understand. Demons did not always comprehend human mating and the result of it. True, some of their kind knew the process and indeed bred rapidly at times through its use, but they bred as animals without any concern for bloodlines. Oh, yes, cousin, Malevolent smiled broadly. We are all the progeny of the grand and noble Bartok himself. The mantis clacked his mandibles together, rightly impressed. He looked even more pleased with himself, likely because he had chosen rightly in joining forces with Augustus Malevolent. As for Nork, he took no evident pleasure in the revelation. Like so many lesser mortals, not at all understanding what Bartok had nearly accomplished. How many men had earned the respect and fear of not only their fellows, but heaven and hell too. It disappointed the general slightly, for, as he said, the two were indeed cousins of a sort. Of course, since Nork had a few moments left to his life, the disappointment was not at all that great. A fool removed was still a fool removed, always a plus in the world. Blood calls the blood, Nork muttered, staring down at the sand. Blood calls the blood, she said. Blood to blood. Indeed, and that is why with you the armor could act as it could not for so many centuries. Great powers lay dormant within it, the power within life. In you flowed the life that had given the sorcery a spark. It was as if two halves, separated for so long, came together to create the whole. Bartuk's blood? Augustus Malevolent pursed his lips. Yes, we've gone over that. You mentioned she. Magdalena, perhaps. A necromancer warlord, Zezek interjected. Quite dead now. He lifted one sickle limb up, indicating the cause. But as for the witch, she is also no more. A pity, but I suppose it had to be anyways. Something occurred to the slim commander. Excuse me a moment, will you? He turned back to where his hellish warriors harassed Luke Lane, picturing the demon who wore the face of Zeko. In the distance, the ghoulish minion suddenly turned from his task at the lead catapult and rushed toward Malevolent. The moment he reached the general, the demon went down on one knee. Yes, warlord. A sharp intake of breath escaped from false Zeko as he suddenly noticed Nork on the armor. Your armor! Your command! The city has no more value. It's yours to play with. A savage, toothy grin spread an impossible distance across the dead man's features. You're very gracious, warlord. General Malevolent nodded and waved him off. Go! Let no life be spared! Beat them into the ground! Luca Lane will serve as notices what hope of any other kingdom, any other power is going against me. The thing with Zeko's face rushed off, fairly bouncing up and down with glee as he hurried off to tell the others. The horde would ravage the city, leave nothing standing. In many ways, it would have swayed the warlord for what had happened at this June. Then June. Malevolent's chest swelled with anticipation. Now that he had the armor, even Kyrgyzstan, legendary home of the Vizhari, would fall to him. His hand traced the fox in the sword crust on his own breastplate. Long ago, after he had slain his birth father and burned down the house that had never acknowledged him, Augustus Malevolent had decided to bear the symbol of that house on his armor in order to remind himself that what he wanted, he would always be able to take it. Now, though, the time had come to set aside that symbol for a better one. The blood-red suit of Bartok. He turned back to Zazex and the mercenary. Well, shall we begin? Zazex prodded Nork forward. The man stumbled, then dared to glare at the demon. Malevolent's opinion of his distant cousin rose a notch. At least the buffoon had some nerve. But the words spat bitterly from Nork's mouth did not at all please the new warlord. I can't give it to you. What do you mean by that? It won't come off. I've tried again and again, and it won't come off. Not even the boots. I have no control over the armor whatsoever. I thought I did, but it was all a trick. What I do, where I go, the armor always decides. His tragic situation amused General Malevolent. Sounds almost like a comic opera. Is there any truth to this, Zazox? This one would have to say the fool speaks the truth, Warlord. He could not even move to save the necromancer. How fascinating. Still a problem not at all difficult to solve. He raised a hand toward Knaak. Not with the power now in my command. The spell summoned from memories other than his own should have enabled Malevolent to desiccate his soldier within the very armor, leaving but a dried husk, easily removed. Bartok had used the spell and used it well during his reign, and never once had it failed him. But now it did. Knaak Vizerin stood wide-eyed but untouched. He looked as if he had truly expected to die, which made the failure of so strong a spell all the more puzzling. Zazax it was who suggested the reason. Your spell encompasses the entire body, Warlord. Perhaps the suit reacts instantly, as if attacked itself. A good point. Then we'll just have to do something a little more personal. He stretched out his hand, and the demon blade appeared in it. Beheading him should sever the armor's link. It needs a live host, not a corpse. As he approached, the general noted the mercenary struggling within the suit, trying desperately to make it move. Malevolent took the lack of reaction by Bartok's armor as a sign that he had chosen the right method this time. One swift slash would do it. In some ways, Vizerin should have considered himself honored. Had not the first great warlord perished much the same way? Perhaps Malevolent would keep the man's head for a trophy, a reminder of this wondrous day. I shall remember you always, Knaak, my cousin. Remember you for all you have given me. General Augustus Malevolent readied the ebony sword, taking expert aim at his target's throat. Yes, one swift slash. Much more elegant than simply hacking away until the head fell off. Smiling, he performed the killing stroke, only to have his blade resound off an identical one, now held in Knaak's left hand. What in the name of hell? The mercenary looked as startled as him. Behind Knaak Vizerin, the monstrous demon cackled and chittered in open consternation. Knaak, or rather the armor, shifted in combat stance. The other black blade ready for any attack by the general. A peculiar expression spread across the soldier's countenance, an expression both bewildered and bemused. After a moment's hesitation, he dared speak to Malevolent. I guess I might not think you're the right choice for it, General. I guess you'd be forced to fight over it. I'm sorry. Believe me, I am. Malevolent fought back his growing rage. He could ill afford to lose his temper now. In a calm tone, he returned, "In fight, we shall, Vizerin. And when I claim the armor, the victory will be that much sweeter for this battle." He swung at Norik. Zazax feared that he had made a terrible error. Now before him stood two mortals clad in pieces of Bartek's armor. Two mortals who both seemed capable of wielding to some extent the warlord's ancient sorcery. Yet the Mantis had thrown in his lot with Malevolent, who had until now seemed the destined successor. The suit of armor, however, clearly saw matters differently, choosing to defend its quite unwilling host. The demon had worked hard to convince his infernal lord Belial to sacrifice so many hellish minions to this effort. Belial had only agreed because he, too, had thought that a new Bartok could give him the edge he needed not only against his rival, but the possible return of any of the three primevals. If Zazax had assumed wrongly, if Nork Vizerin somehow managed to win, it would look as if Belial's lieutenant had completely mismanaged the entire affair. Belial did not suffer in consequences in his servants. Now, watching the two prepare for the struggle, he also felt certain that the Sioux had played him in particular for a fool. It had come with him as if docile, as if it only wished to reunite itself with the helmet, then join the demon's cause. However, now the Mantis believed that it sought the helmet only, and after that intended to turn upon him. It must have known that Zazax had been the one who had brought the aquatic behemoth to the mortal plane, and who, after questioning the dying mariner, had sent that monster to attack the ship. At the time, Zazax had thought he could quicken matters, take the armor before it ever reached dry land. Glena had guided him to a fair approximation of where Nork Vizerin could be found. It should have been a simple matter for the hellish beast to rip the puny wooden vessel apart, then strip the armor from the dead man's body. Only the armor had not only fended off the titanic creature, it had slain the demon with hardly any effort. The result had been so startling that it had sent Zazax fleeing in panic. It had never expected the enchanted armor to unleash such overwhelming power. The Mantis fixed his gaze on the back of the mercenary. His decision made. With Malevolent as the warlord, Zazax had something spectacular to show his master, an ally with whom they could crush Azmodan and, if necessary, the three. However, with Nork Vizerin, the unwilling host Belial would surely not be nearly so pleased. And when his master was displeased, those who failed him suffered much for it. The demon raised one sickle, biding his time in the heat of combat. It would take only one strike. The general might complain about his loss of glory, but he would soon come around. Then they would return to the ravaging of Luca Lane, and from there, the rest of the mortal realm. Nork did not even feel a fraction of the confidence he tried to portray to General Malevolent. While his words concerning the suit's reluctance to part from him had been true, that did not mean that he trusted in the ability of the enchanted armor to defeat the helmed officer. In truth, Malevolent looked as if the link between him and the helmet far surpassed the questionable alliance Knaak suffered. Not only did Malevolent share in the knowledge and skills of the Warlord of Blood, but the General also had his own not inconsiderable abilities. In combination with what the helmet offered, even the armor would likely not be able to stand long against the dedicated commander. The general came at him, attacking with such fury that the suit had to step back in order to save Knaak. Again and again the fiery blades clashed, each time sending plumes of flame flying. Had they fought in any other domain save for the sandy deserts, the odds of a fire starting would have been quite likely. Knaak himself worried that some stray spark would land on his hair or would blind him in one eye. Bad enough already that he had to participate in a desperate struggle without having any choice as to defend or attack. For from what he quickly saw, the armor had some gaps in its knowledge of swordplay. True, it countered Malevolent strikes, but Knaak watched at least in one evident opening go wasted. He had not, the bloody warlord, learned how to properly handle the blade. Bit's like fighting oneself, isn't it? Sneered his adversary. Accustomed Malevolent seemed to be enjoying himself. So certain of victory did he no doubt feel. Knaak said nothing in return, wishing that even if he had to die, it would be through his own efforts, not the failures of the enchanted armor. Malevolent's blade passed within inches of his head. Knaak swore, muttering quietly to the armor, "If you can't do better than that, I should be the one leading." "Do you really think so?" retorted the general's expression no longer amused. "You think a simpleton like you worthier to bear the title, carry on the legacy than I would be?" The suit suddenly had to defend against a series of lightning-swift attacks by Malevolent. Knaak silently cursed the general's exceptional hearing. The man believed that the mercenary had mocked him. He had served under many a skilled officer, battled many a talented foe, but Knaak could not recall any with the adaptability of Augustus Malevolent. Only the fact that the general fought as much with Bartek's skills as his own enabled the suit to anticipate most of his moves. Even then, if not for the other protections of the armor, Knaak would have already been dead twice. "You are fortunate that the enchantments protect you so well," the slim commander said as he momentarily backed away. "Else this matter would have been settled already. But if I died so quickly, it would have meant that the armor wasn't as special as you hoped." Malevolent chuckled. "Ha ha! True. You have some wits about you after all. Shall we see what they look like spilled over the sand?" Again, he thrust up, over, and around Knaak's guard. Twice Bartek's plate nearly failed the soldier. Knaak gritted his teeth. The ancient warlord had been a good swordman, but his methods were those of the Vajeri. After so many years in the company of Watson, who could handle a sword well despite being a mage, the veteran fighter probably knew more about the advantages and disadvantages of their fighting style than even the general here. Malevolent appeared to have accepted that melding his skills with those of Bartek only meant the better, yet if Knaak himself had been combating the man, he could have been possibly threatened Malevolent's life at least twice. he suddenly screamed, as right ear feeling as if it had been burst into flame. General Malevolent finally landed a blow, albeit a glancing one. Unfortunately, with the magical swords, even that meant an agonizing injury. Norik's entire ear throbbed, but fortunately, despite the wound, he could still hear with it. Yet one more strike like that. If only he could enter the fight himself. If only the suit could understand that he had a better chance. He knew the weakness. Knew also the Western styles the general used. There were some tricks that Norik doubted that even the helmed commander had learned. As a mercenary, one picked up such tricks to make up for deficiencies in formal training, and more than once that saved the veteran. Let me fight. Or at least, let me fight alongside you. The suit ignored him. It deflected Malevolent's latest attack, then tried countering with a move recognizable to the veteran from some of Fosson's own occasional sessions of sword practice. However, Norik also knew that the Vajere people had also developed a counter move that attacked, and a moment later, Malevolent proved him right by using it to keep the armor from succeeding. So far, the battle had been all the generals. It could not go on much longer. Bartek's plate might desire Norik as its simple, malleable host, but if matters continued as they presently did, it would soon have to bow to the skill and might of General Malevolent and his own enchanted helmet. Caught up in his darkening thoughts, Norik barely noticed his foe suddenly thrust toward his face. The veteran fighter immediately raised his sword, barely pushing Malevolent's blade aside. Had he failed to do so, the general's weapon would have cut right through Norik's skull, coming out the back. And then it came to Norik that he, and not the armor, had just defended against the nearly fatal assault. He had no time to mull over the sudden shift, for Malevolent did not slow his advance. The would-be warlord cut again and again at Norik, forcing him backward in the direction of the watching Zazax. Yet despite the precautions of the situations, Norik's hopes rose. If he died, he would die his own man. Augustus Malevolent tried a move the soldier recognized from one of his first forays as a mercenary. The maneuver took skill and cunning and oft-times succeeded, but from a willing commander, Norik had learned how it could be turned to the opponent's advantage. What? General Malevolent's gaping expression interested Norik Vizran as he turned what should have been a near-mortal blow by the general into a sudden counterattack that forced the veteran's foe to retreat or lose his own head. Wasting no time, Norik sought to push the general back until the soft sand made the man stumble or even fall. But at the last moment, Malevolent succeeded in turning the duel back into a stalemate. Well, the helm figure gasped. Seems that the suit can learn like a man. Interesting. I would have thought that it would have known that last move. Norik refrained from telling him the truth. Any advantage he had, however small, he would use. Yet he could not help keep a slight grim smile from briefly crossing his weary visage. You smile? You think it learning a trick or two enough? Then let's see how it and you fare if we change the rules a little. Malevolent's free hand suddenly came up, and a brilliant sunburst exploded in Norik's eyes. He swung wildly, managing twice to parry the general. Then a tremendous force ripped the sword from his grip. Norik stepped back, lost his footing, and tumbled back onto the sand. Through the vision, still suffering the after effects of Malevolent's treacherous spell, the fallen fighter saw the murky form of his triumphant opponent loom over him. In each hand, General Malevolent held a black sword. The battle is done. I will say, well fought, cousin. It only occurred to me at the last that you seemed a bit more eager than earlier, as if you had joined the duel yourself. So you finally thought that working with the armor would save you. A good notion, but clearly decided upon much too late. Waste no time! Snapped Zazax from somewhere behind Nork. Strike! Strike! Ignoring the demon, Malevolent hefted the two swords, admiring them. Perfect balance in each. I can wield both with no fear of crossing myself up. Interesting, too, that yours still exists. I would have thought it would have faded away once out of your hands, but I suppose that since I immediately grabbed it, that made all the difference. Bartek's enchantments are full of surprises, are they not? Still trying to focus better, Norik suddenly felt his left hand tingle. He knew the sensation and had experienced it before. The suit intended some ploy, but exactly what ploy the fighter did not know. Yes, he did know. The knowledge filled Norik's head, instantly enabling him not only to understand the enchanted armor's part in this, but the man's as well. For this to succeed, both would have to work together. Neither alone stood a chance of success. Norik fought back a grin. Instead, he satisfied himself with answering his adversary. Yes, they are. The left gauntlet third! Norik's lost sword transformed into an inky shadow swarming over Malevolent's arm and head. Swearing, the general released his grip on his own weapon and gestured toward the hungering shadow. From his mouth came ancient words, Vajere words. A green luminescence radiated from his fingertips, eating away in turn at the shadow. Yet as Malevolent focused his attention on this new menace, Norik leapt up at him, just as the armor had desired. As the shadow faded away under the brunt of the general's own spell, Norik seized Malevolent by the hands, and the two wrestled. This close, neither dared use Bartek's sorcery unless certain. The battle's even again, General. Norik, for the first time, feeling as if he, not anyone else, had commanded of the situation. The armor and he had a common goal at last. Triumph over this foul foe. Exhilaration filled him as he grappled. Exhilaration at the thought of Malevolent lying dead at his feet. And the fact that much of that newfound determination and confidence might possibly have come from a source other than himself did not enter his mind. Nor did it occur to Norik that if he did slay the one who wore the crimson helmet, then he had as good as cursed himself to the fate of Bartek's armor had long chosen for him. Zazax watched the sudden turn of events with great dismay. The shifting tide in the battle had caught even him unaware, and now the mortal with whom he had chosen to ally himself risked defeat. Zazax could not take that risk. He had to ensure that this duel ended with Malevolent as the victor. The giant mantis poised to strike.